Hi there. Who wants to hear about data, TV, and the future of healthcare advertising? I got one over here. 2, 3, 4. Well, you're lucky because we've got a powerhouse of women from healthcare who are the experts in the space. Starting from the left, we've got Abbey Berryman. She is the Senior Vice President of Client Partnerships at NBCU. Abbey serves as an advocate for NBCU's brand partners within the automotive, pharma, and travel categories. And she was recently recognized by She Runs It as a 2025 Working Women of the Year. Congratulations for that.
Thank you.
Next, we have Melissa Gordon-Ring, who's the president of IPG Health. She oversees a global portfolio of major pharma and health brands. With over 20 years of experience in advertising, Melissa is passionate about creating innovative patient-focused and strategic communication plans to help clients achieve successful results. And she was recently awarded by MM&M Women of Distinction Award. So congratulations, Melissa.
Thank you very much.
And last but not least, we've got Erin Nocito, Executive Director of Amgen. Welcome, Erin. Erin oversees all promotional media efforts across the portfolio of Amgen brands. She's responsible for leading media transformation strategy, operation, and agency management. Prior to Amgen, Erin held media leadership position at Eli Lilly, as well as several top agencies, working with many of the world's top largest advertisers. So TV. I think we can all agree here that TV is no longer a siloed awareness play, right? So, Abbey, how is the role of TV evolving in the broader healthcare landscape?
I think this will probably be a common theme today, but precision targeting, I think, is really what is changing the landscape. A couple of years ago, our organization came out with one platform, total audience, which really just puts the audience at the center. But I think it's not necessarily thinking about linear versus digital. It's about the audience and what's the best way to reach them with the power of video. So we're seeing a lot of increases in streaming, of course, 10% for the category year over year, but also in linear, 19%. So I think that advertisers, particularly in healthcare, are leveraging the space of video to be able to tell a story. I think there's been a little bit of a shift in storytelling from only being product focused to also reputation building a brand, really getting across the values of the brand.
Melissa.
Television continues to be, or I should say video continues to be an important part of our plans. I think also in the world of healthcare, we hold very tight to some of our models, our market mix models. So it's hard to also kind of extract that from brand marketers. But more importantly, it's how we understand the way that we position the messaging and truly find those spaces and places using video for the right reasons at the right time. And it has to be measurable.
Yeah, and I think as many of them already mentioned, the term TV from an industry standpoint is almost not relevant any longer, right? It is about video. And I think healthcare maybe was a little bit slower to kind of start to capitalize on that. But now it's about where is our consumer, patient, customer? How do we reach them from a video standpoint? And using all the tools, including data and technology, to do that. So, yeah, it's been a journey over the last few years, yeah.
We're seeing more and more dollars move to data targeting from traditional linear, traditional TV. What are some of the innovative ways, Melissa, that you've seen TV campaigns?
I think there's a lot of different things that are innovative. I think when we think about data as well as the utilization of that and tying that back to actual action, the content can be produced in, a zillion different permutations, which can be more challenging within our healthcare world. But the reality is that if we can tie it back to using the data and understanding what actions are taken by each exposure, that's where the really meaningful innovation takes place.
I think also the data and how it enables you to fully understand your consumer, your patient. So not just understanding what disease state, what therapeutic area or symptoms they're dealing with in that moment, But what are their other interests, and how do we reach them based on that, especially as they're on that early journey into dealing with the diagnosis or pre-diagnosis is a space that we've explored more, I would say, especially on brands like our Bone Health portfolio, where we're dealing with premenopausal, menopausal women that may be at a risk for fracture. We need to understand more than just their diagnosis, right? Because we need to reach them before that. And then how the data enables us to make each campaign better and better more quickly as we go through, right? And that then ties back to a really smart measurement plan, KPIs that are actionable, that everyone's aligned to, so we can move quickly. And so, yeah, the data picture has just enabled the front end and the back end to be much, much more mature.
Just a couple things to add to what both Melissa and Erin said. I would say the way that we're looking at it is, from a media standpoint, publisher standpoint, is to ensure that we have the right solutions. So we know pharma in particular is unique. There are regulations to keep in mind, a lot of information, the need for longer ad units. So when we built Peacock, it was actually with advertisers in mind. And pharma is unique, so we need to find the right solutions. We have been developing ad innovations, which are not just about running your spot, but how do you break through with the consumer? How do you grab them when they are most engaged with the programming? So that's one area. And then to build on their data points, one thing that we've been investigating is, obviously many pharmas come to us with their first-party data, which is great. We also have strong, powerful first-party data when we can marry the two, and to Erin's point, bring insights into even the communications planning process and the creative development. I feel like that is very helpful. And we're also forging relationships with retail media networks like a Walmart, like an Instacart, and others to just help bring a more powerful data story.
Abby, how would you recommend campaigns be optimized for those healthcare providers?
I mean, I think it changes all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, I think everybody's talked about measurement. So, we work with a variety of third-party measurement. We have a really strong measurement team. That's the foundation of it. And I think it's just kind of following the consumer, and that's how you optimize. So it's not a set it and forget it, for sure.
Yeah.
Keeps us on our toes.
Yep. Erin?
Yeah, I think we do have a different dynamic in healthcare where oftentimes paid media is not going to necessarily drive that ultimate prescription to be written, right? That takes a doctor visit, that takes a doctor level of education, et cetera. So we need to find proxies earlier on in the journey to enable us to understand how is our investment working, where can we make changes. That comes down to brand metrics, the quality of your audience that you're reaching, and maybe more performance-based KPIs that you can identify, because that script lift involves so many different factors beyond just the paid media ultimately for the patient.
There's so many signals.
Yeah.
There's just so many of them, and really being able to identify what those are, whether they're leading indicators or lagging indicators, all of that makes us just smarter in terms of being able to reach patients faster. But I also, for a second, just want to touch on the fact that we even use video to reach HCPs and physicians, and that's becoming an even more interesting space for us to play in terms of messaging and understanding what that role has in terms of educating physicians and where that intersection, ideally the holy grail is the intersection of the patient and the physician.
Yeah.
And where and how we can find that in video, I think is, really exciting as we think about the future.
So how do you think about that, Melissa, connecting patients and providers? It's something we think about every single day at Swoop. I'd love to hear.
We think about it all the time. I think what's great is in a lot of the businesses that we have at Mediabrands, we manage both the HCP and the DTC business, and it's understanding those areas of overlap and intersection that are the most powerful, whether that's within the world of search and lean forward types of channels, or even when we think about point of care, how are we using our messages in a way that can help us educate both audiences and prime them for that conversation to truly understand what their options are.
Yeah.
To me, it's all about options, and that's what we do. We're not, we're trying to drive awareness, but it's more about ensuring people understand that there are options for what it is that they're going through, or options for a disease that they may be, have more likelihood to have in the future. But we really, so whoever comes up with the most perfect solution for understanding how we can leverage the HCP and the DTC dollars together is going to be, very wealthy. but we keep trying and pushing, and there are ways for us to do that in measurement, which is super exciting. But if we can continue to push that and drive that at scale, it just allows us to reach patients and physicians faster and make people feel better faster.
Yeah. Do you have importance that you put on really understanding the physician and their profile? And
our audience data is absolutely critical for us in every single step of the way, both on a patient side and a physician side. We work so closely with Axiom as part of our organization. It's embedded in everything that we do, and we can understand, 100%, who these people are in a privacy compliant way, but being able to pull that through into working with partners like NBCU and understanding what those audiences are for Amgen is just, that's the most powerful thing that we could do.
Right.
You're dealing with humans, right? On the customer, physician, nurse practitioner, I'd add caregiver to that 100%. Dynamic as well, and patient side. And I think the connectivity, we're still waiting for that magic wand in terms of helping us tell one consistent media story throughout the two. But a lot of that also sits on us as marketers to make sure that our story, our communication strategy is addressing both ends of that journey, allowing the doctor to have a more knowledgeable, maybe patient-first conversation with their patients that are coming in, and arming the patients with information so that they can be proactive when they walk into that doctor's office, because we know both of them have less time than ever to spend together, right? So everyone needs that knowledge at their fingertips.
That's great. Abby, given the changes in technology and advancements in analytics, what are some of your predictions within the TV?
I guess from a prediction standpoint, I mentioned retail media networks before. That's one piece of it. But I also think just data collaboration in general will be important. I mentioned it in the first question, but the power of bringing all of our data together, again, to inform the insights going into creative, into your placements. We want to be part of that whole journey. And so I think just kind of understanding I understand that there's limitations sometimes with retail media networks, given all of the privacy concerns with the category. However, there are still some breakthrough ways to address that. So we believe that's going to be a big part of the marketing playbook.
Erin.
Yeah, I think that the data and the technology likely is something that we're going to have to continue, and our customers and consumers are something we're going to have to continue to keep pace with, right? It's going to probably move faster than we can on a day-to-day basis predict. But I hope that at the end of the day, all of it still enables more and more of the human connectivity across that journey, and enables us to make faster decisions, not just for media, but also for content. That to me is, we talk a lot about AI, right? AI has been part of how we buy media for many, many years, right? Has it evolved and matured? Yes, but it's been part of our approach for many, many years. I think the content space now is the next evolution. It's a little bit harder in healthcare for us to get that ball rolling, but it will come. And how do we make sure now that we're using the data to fuel not just the media buying faster, smarter, but the content being faster, smarter, and more relevant to each audience that we're reaching?
100%, and it's truly an accelerator, right? And that's what's most important for us too, as we think about how we can communicate effectively and with power. So that's the ability to take the limitless possibilities of what content looks like now and marry that with our understanding of audiences and the various platforms is really exciting as we think about the future.
This question's for Erin. When you marry together TV and digital channels, what are some of the marketing strategies that you look at? And do you have any examples of campaigns that you might have run?
I think more and more we're trying to start from a place of channel agnostic, and especially when you think about TV, like we said before, it's not TV, it's video. And so what's our video strategy, right? And then taking that rich audience data and finding ways to, in the right way for each audience, reach them. And through our partnership with NBCU and Swoop, we're able to place ourselves in more traditional linear inventory, right? Traditionally, it's been demo-based targeting, right? And leverage audiences built on that rich data foundation to not just drive awareness, right? Higher level metrics, but also actually action-based metrics that we can tie back to script lift as well as tie back to on-site engagement. So it's great to see partners that we've been working with for a very long time, right, enable us to use the rich data sets that we all have to do something new, right, and really keep up with the pace of our patient and consumers.
It was a really incredible use case because we saw over 7% increase in new patient prescriptions, 38% increase in greater reach, and 14% increase in incremental search volume. So we're really happy with the program. So thank you. Melissa, how can TV paired with digital advertising work together in the omnichannel space?
I think it can be most effective as we think about ways that ensure that there is complete fluidity between both, right? That is more about how we follow the patient, we follow the HCP and how they're using content. And if we can, make it a seamless transition from video to digital, that's how they see it. Yeah. And the easier that we make it for them to not just engage with our content, but learn more, take action from any exposure, whether that is a video exposure or a more traditional type of digital exposure. That is what we always are looking to do, and really following the following the target, following the patient, and using the data to empower us to understand what their behaviors are on an individual basis, so that we can learn and have great numbers like you just shared.
Abbey?
I guess I would add here that from our perspective, and one of the reasons actually why I came to work at NBCUniversal was that we do have this vast portfolio, but what good does that do you if you don't know where to go? Right. So that is why I mentioned before, we do enable our advertisers to access the entire portfolio, and you don't even the output is the digital and linear mix, and it's really just about, as everybody said, where the audience is. So I think, you mentioned the results specifically. We're very proud of those as well. So I think we're all on the same page in terms of putting the audience at the center.
That's great. Abbey, how can healthcare marketers leverage data today to create more relevant, engaging TV?
It's a great question. So one area that we're investing in is leveraging AI. We actually have a proprietary tool that we use and enable our advertisers to use that leverages generative AI, machine learning, statistical models to really be able to predict how their creative will deliver on the KPIs that are most important to them. And so we use that for big investments like Super Bowl or Olympics, where you want to make sure that you're actually getting the value for the dollars that you're spending. But this, you can even put it doesn't even have to be fully baked creative. You can talk about you can give us storyboards, and we can do that and help kind of direct there. So we're constantly trying to look for ways to help our advertisers. Our end goal is for their dollars to work as hard as possible.
Melissa?
Yeah, I think, it's wonderful to have partners that think that way, right? And are always trying to come up with solutions. But, we have to continue to challenge one another too, right? And come up with those things that are new and different, and are ideally being ahead of the game, which can be a little challenging in our world. But more importantly, I think kind of exciting or more strategic, because we have these challenges. So we're a little bit more feisty at sometimes or creative. But having a good relationship, I think, is really important. But once again, finding those partners that can really understand the new dynamics of today and set us up for success for tomorrow.
I think what makes us feisty too is we're dealing in a space where there's urgency, right? There's urgency for the patient. You get that diagnosis. They're not waiting for that next message, right? We have to be there to enable them with the right information. So I think that's critical. The other side of the spectrum, even before you get to even in-market testing or pre-market testing, is how technology can help us with insight generation, right? So better understanding of customer, patient, caregiver, the whole journey, the whole spectrum, I think is another area where I'm eager to see what can be developed that we can tap into.
And I would imagine that helps with improved patient outcomes.
Yes.
Are you able to measure?
Which is the ultimate goal across the board. Yeah.
Wonderful. Do you have any examples, Melissa or Abbey, of or Erin, of advertising that contributed to improved patient outcomes?
I think it's all of our advertising.
Yeah.
I think that there's so much process and diligence in everything that we do. And the fact that we can measure and pivot if something isn't working, and we're going to make sure that we, the dollars that count, and especially in our world, the dollars that were spent towards advertising it means in some way it's a shift in terms of the organization's investment versus things like research and development and that type of stuff. So the priorities that our healthcare clients make in terms of putting advertising dollars in the market, we have to make sure that it works. So
yeah. Okay. Last question. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, it's interesting from our portfolio, right? We have everything from something like Otezla, right, which is for psoriasis, very sizable audience, patient or potential patient population, to rare disease products where you're truly trying to reach hundreds of patients only. And the interesting thing is now that TV, video, there are opportunities to use all these channels to reach every end of that portfolio, right? Small audience populations, large audience populations. It just comes down to doing it in the right way, and that's what really makes it impactful at the end of the day.
So, Erin, last question. How does programmatic play into the future of TV advertising?
I think it's critical, right? Because we touched on the urgency. We touched on the need from a patient perspective. Programmatic, data-driven buying allows us to do that more intelligently, faster. And I don't see a world where we're able to get to the patient outcomes that we want to get to without living in that ecosystem and making it better and better as we go on.
Great. Melissa?
No, I think that the ability for us to work dynamically and the programmatic marketplaces, and the way that we have been working within that channel across all of the different tactics for so long is ripe for television, and figuring out how we connect those pipes, connecting that information to make every decision and every engagement more powerful is, it's coming.
Great. Take it home, Abbey.
Okay. We actually are seeing tremendous growth in programmatic. Our role as a partner, we think, is to make it easy for our advertisers to work with us. So that's a mechanism of buying, and we're here for it. I think one of the unique things that has happened in the last 12 to 18 months is we view it as a way to democratize our inventory to partners, and maybe even for smaller campaigns like Erin was mentioning, that it's not a huge budget, but we're giving access to things like sports that hasn't been available before. So we definitely see growth in the future.
Wonderful. Well, this has been very informative, so thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us. Okay.